Don't expect this year's holiday shopping season to help the retailers. Consumers expect to spend less and start shopping later in the year, too. These are just some of the highlights in today's annual holiday shopping survey released by the NPD Group, a market research firm. Joining us now is the company's chief industry analyst, Marshal Cohen. He joins us from San Diego. Marshal, great to see you.
A pleasure to be here.
So the key thing from your survey is that it found more people expect to spend less this year over last year. Is that at all surprising, given that the economy is starting to recover now?
Actually, the big surprise is the absence of an even bigger number of consumers who are saying that they're going to spend less. Only 4% more consumers said that they plan on spending less this holiday. That even surprised me.
So you're saying this is a signal that the economy is in the early stages of recovery?
Yeah, you know, a couple months ago we were on air here talking about how clearly the consumer's showing us that they've stabilized and now are beginning to really show that they're starting to spend a little bit of money, what I call frugal fatigue. They've gotten tired of having to really cut back. They're not going to use holiday as their place to really save a lot of money. And remember, we were up against some big issues last year. The shock of the recession to the consumer, very expensive energy costs and home heating bills and gas prices, you know, that were really sticker shock issues for the consumer. We're not up against that shock factor this year. And the consumer's looking at holiday this year to say, I will be frugal and I will cut back on the number of people I'm going to buy gifts for, but I'm not going to necessarily cut back on the amount I spend for the people that are on the list.
So that translates to a 0.5% to a 1.5% increase in spending.
Yeah, the way I really read between the lines, while consumers tell us they're going to spend less overall in the number of people that they're going to be buying for, they will probably spend more money on the people that they are buying. And remember, we're also up against very, very deep historical discounts from last year, which really translates to the fact that the consumers will probably buy about the same amount of gifts as last year, maybe even a little bit less, but they're going to be spending more money on that. Retailers are not going to be discounting 75 off plus another 25 off on top of that.
And your survey shows, as far as gifts that will be purchased, about equal percentages for the top 3 gifts: apparel, toys, and movies. Is there a standout product this year?
You know, that's a really interesting question. This year, the issue really isn't what's new and exciting. This year, it's really more about back to traditional gifts. So if you haven't gotten that holiday motif sweater from your aunt last year, you may just get one this year.
And your survey found some movement, though, in the bottom 5 categories, with more people buying accessories, music, fragrances. Is it simply because these are less expensive items?
You know, it's less expensive, it's less creative, it's also just something that people really don't know what to give this year. You know, whether you're buying for a toddler or whether you're buying for a senior citizen and anyone in between, you know, most people have the digital camera, most people have the cell phone. A lot of the electronic items that people have bought for themselves, they're not needed again this year. There's not a lot of newness. The retailers were very conservative, along with manufacturers this year, because of the economy, and that really leads to less creative gifts this year than what we've seen in the recent past.
Is this going to change next year? I mean, as you said, there's no standout toy. We were just chatting, kind of joking. I don't know what to buy people this year.
You know, I really hope that the retailers and the manufacturers understand that getting conservative and being lean doesn't mean that you have to bore the consumer out of wanting to shop. So they're usually pretty good and pretty progressive about learning from the prior year. So next year, look for a lot of newness to really hit the shelves and try to ignite the consumer yet again. They're just waiting for the consumer to show up, and they're just starting now to. So that's going to allow retailers and manufacturers to open up the doors to getting more creative and more innovative with product for next year.
How does the gift buying break down demographically?
You know, this year it's really going to be interesting to see how the teen market, which generally is one that's insulated against recessionary times, has really been hit pretty hard. The good news, though, is that it's really favoring more towards the younger consumer and even the boomer and beyond consumer. Those are the 2 areas that are going to really feel the biggest potential for opportunistic sales. The mid-sector market, they're the ones that, you know, are still focused on, you know, giving the kids more of the gifts. So that's the area where mom and dad are going to look at each other and say, you're going to get a little bit less of a gift this year. And
this is interesting. Electronics, according to your research, are now more of a necessity to this younger demographic, right, as opposed to a gift, a luxury item.
Yeah, what's happened is we've really seen the electronics business really step up in its importance. You know, 3-4 years ago, it was just barely in the top 10. Now it's, when you combine all electronics, it's the third most important gift-given item for holiday. And, you know, there are a lot of consumers that have a lot of electronic items, but it's the upgrades. You know, all of a sudden now, a smartphone has become one of the most important gift items for a teenager to want to get this holiday season. So it's really about progression and how the consumer wants to continually update.
Okay.
So electronics looks like a nice little area for the consumer to be focused on.
All right, Marshal Cohen, Chief Industry Analyst with NPD Group, giving us a precursor to what to expect in holiday spending. Thanks again.
Pleasure to be here.